So this is Chris Thiede with Comarch Magazine, and I'm here with Jen Luoni. Am I saying your name correctly?
Oh, you did. You said it correctly. Nice.
Look at that. Very good. So we're here to talk about a specific project, but before we get into that, if you could tell us, obviously we know your name, but what's your position and your role?
I am the Director of Operations for our architectural group. I run the day-to-day workload management, make sure the projects are running well and all those kind of things, manage the man hours, do all the proposal costing, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm.
And that's at Dacon, the name of the firm, obviously?
Yes, it's at Dacon, sorry. Yeah, it's at Dacon. Right. And we are broken out into, we have a construction arm and an architectural group, and then I run the architectural group.
Okay. So we're here to talk about a specific project, that being ABI Lab. I guess start off, just kind of tell us, describe the project in general, the building, the facility itself, and, what its overall, I guess, purpose is, or why was it created?
Well, it was created because the building right now is a bio-incubator building. It's four stories right now, and the first and fourth floor have been fit up with approximately 23 labs right now, ranging in about size about 750 to 1,000 square feet per lab, with central amenities and things like that. I'll just back up a little. The project came to life because across the street is actually ABI Labs 1. The client had another kind of ABI Labs running, kind of a building he started himself, and he had these bio-incubator labs, and over the past couple of years it has absolutely taken off. So he became partners with another guy that owns the land in the area, and they said, let's see how much more incubator space we can get in Natick. So we built this 4-story building right now, and there is 2 floors that we didn't fit up, but we're in the process now of looking to fit them up because of how rapidly the bio-incubator is growing.
Okay. And this is in Boston, obviously?
Right outside of Boston, probably about 15 to 17 miles outside of Natick, Massachusetts.
All right. Very good. And so talk a little bit about the clients themselves, who they are and, what's their overall vision.
Gary Kaufman is the kind of main person behind all this. He's the one that started the ABI Labs 1. And his mission really is to help, startups be able to get going and give them all they need so we can help, innovation and technology kind of get going a lot faster. Because I think what he identified was somebody coming out of school, it's not very easy to be able to get all the equipment that you need to be able to do lab work or R&D. So he found that if he offered these little incubators where he has the freezer, the autoclave, he's got all the amenities they need, and they just pay a base lease rate, it helps people kind of be able to get in there and start doing, testing. And I'm not sure if you saw our video of what some of the people in there that are doing, but it's really great work. Cancer research, blood loss research, things like that. So, sorry. That off. So that's Gary. And David, who has been a longtime partner in a family-run real estate like development. They own the Sherwood Plaza in Natick, a lot of areas, and the land. Well, David saw the growing need for these incubators, and he partnered with Gary, and they went in together on this adventure.
Okay.
So
talk about when they approached Dacon with the project. I mean, what was that process like? What made the project, at the beginning, kind of unique from a design standpoint?
I think they approached. First off, they approached Dacon because we're out of Natick, Mass. too, and I think that Gary and David are all very much about supporting local growth in industry. And then they also knew that we were design build. So I think their original vision was to be able to get this building up and going fast because they saw the need. So I think that's when they came to us. And then plus we had a couple other buildings in the area that they kind of liked and they wanted to kind of model after, but they also didn't want to kind of spend that kind of money. So we really are really good at coming up with a way to, have design, but, keep the cost down and that's kind of, I think, one of the main things they came to us, and they already kind of had a layout in their head that we kind of just helped with our expertise to kind of go from there. So
Okay.
very rapidly.
So how is this project, I guess, different from a quote unquote standard commercial space, if there is such a thing?
It's definitely different from a standard commercial space. I mean, in terms of just an office building, the difference here is obviously the HVAC, the power, the utility requirements. But in terms of a standard like lab space, this space has kind of been set up more flexible,
Okay.
for all different kinds of users, as well as it has the lab space, but then it has shared amenities throughout the building, such as conference rooms, prep rooms, common labs, and it has other equipment that people can use and share. And I think what that their hope was, and what they saw in their other building, is that these kind of spaces create collaboration and partnering amongst the different lab entities to kind of like help propel technology and innovation.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the really the biggest things. And I think that's why they're having such a success rate, because this environment that they've created, not just like, because you can have lab space anywhere, right? You can take an office building, make a lab, you can do it everywhere. But I think that this environment they're creating is what people are really, really liking. And not only that, you're looking at a 30 to 50% cost reduction not being in Boston,
Right.
right? So that's really kind of a huge, huge selling point as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get into the design of the space a little bit and talk a little bit about maybe give some examples of some specific requirements and challenges. Describe some of those and how Dacon approach those challenges.
I think one of the biggest design requirements to start with was really kind of the lab requirements for the BL2 labs, the biosafety level of lab that they're looking at, what chemicals they can use. So that really, a lot of the cost was HVAC.
Okay.
And like had to come up with a really creative way to do it, as well as, to have 4 stories and bringing air and all that down through a building. You need to kind of make sure you understand what you're designing. So we brought an HVAC design builder in very early, and they kind of help work through the different systems and the cost, because ultimately this also is just 2 guys trying to build this building without any investors, right? And anybody leasing the space yet. So we have to be very cost conscious too, make sure we're not over designing. So we brought somebody in very early that kind of helped us with the lab requirements. How should we set up this building so we can kind of create the best kind of shaft space and everything for the building utilities for even for the future spaces. So there's a lot of thought that went into today and what the future is. And then I think the flexibility was something that we really worked hard on coming up with, so they could have different tenants. Even in the existing labs we built, we allowed them flexibility to move stuff, to build rooms within the rooms. And then in the open tenant space, it's all set up for a quick turnaround to build more labs. And I think another challenge we had was the loading dock, what kind of equipment, and making sure we can get the equipment in the building. And it's a very flat site, so we couldn't get a 4-foot loading dock. So it got very interesting on how to figure that out. So we have like a external lift and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of challenges. And then also, money is always a challenge. And where do you sink the investment into the lab space is also aesthetics and luring people in the public areas. So, when we got through most of the technical stuff, and as we kind of went through the budget and the money, and as we saw that we could VE things here, then they, decided to take some of the spaces like the main lobby and really kind of invest more money there. They were a great client to work with because they understood the value and where to put the design and the money versus, the other infrastructure that we needed, and where to keep things basic to save money. So I think that was some of the biggest challenges, but the clients were really great to work with, and they really had a strong idea of what they wanted. So from our perspective, I mean, it makes the design a lot easier.
So you mentioned the kind of the special needs as it pertains to the HVAC. I guess talk a little bit about the importance of bringing in when you're faced with those kinds of technical special needs. bringing in somebody, an expert, kind of early in the process to make sure to kind of guide you along the way. I guess talk a little bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, for one of the first factors is, how do we get the return and supply air to all 4 floors that we can get it so it's except we only have 14-foot floor to floor still because we can't go over a certain amount of height, and we wanted to get 4 floors. And they kind of really helped us figure out what kind of units we could get on the roof, how we should set up the labs so we could have shared HVAC access as well as future access to these shafts. So kind of each lab is on a somewhat of it's very symmetrical, and we have kind of a shaft that each lab shares throughout the building. And then also, a big thing was roof screening and equipment. They really kind of helped us understand to the extent of the roof screen that we needed and how we had to locate it, because now we were up at about 60, 70 feet. And once you put a roof screen up there, it becomes almost like a sail for the building and adds a lot of wind load to the building. So, the instant thing is, let's just put a roof screen around the entire building, the perimeter, and that adds an extreme amount of cost, as well as the higher we went, the more structural we needed. So a lot of these things kind of played together, as well as the air requirements. What labs would get hoods, and those required additional exhaust. So how do we get that up through the roof? A lot of planning like that. And a lot of that actually ends up driving the layout, right? So you're building kind of, we didn't want to try to do a layout and then try to jam all this stuff in and make it all work. It was more practical to kind of really understand how the HVAC, what role it was going to play within the building, and then make sure that we were working with that.
Okay. So, and having that expert, probably saved you, I would think, from having to redo some plans later on if you would have brought them in later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that, yeah, absolutely. Because, I think early on when you're designing stuff, I've seen it many a times, maybe even outside of design build, it's fun to kind of draw pretty pictures, and this is a great concept for a lab, but the utilities and the shaft space and the mechanicals really have a huge impact on the layout in a lab space. And to make sure you have efficient airflow and things like that are really the most important. So when you try to jam things into a design that may be already there without those considerations, I think that you're asking for inefficiency.
Right.
You're asking for redoing things and slowing up the process.
Okay. So shifting gears here a little bit to, I guess, the Dacon design process, and the talk about how your people kind of embraced this challenge and this mission, and kind of because it's obviously very different from your standard commercial office space and so forth. It has a pretty important and special purpose behind it. How did your team kind of embrace that?
Well, I think that we have a lot of history in labs, as well as we have a
Okay.
lot of history in manufacturing and distribution buildings and things like that. And I think one of the biggest things that we have is that we have a lot of in-house experience, from
Okay.
people that build these type of spaces, to the project managers, to the project planners, to the field staff, as well as with design build. We've built a lot of partnerships over the years with our MEP subs, with all of our subs really. So, we're able to leverage those partnerships to be able to gain information really early on what we need to be doing and how we need to accurately design this. It's a very collaborative process. I mean, it's so collaborative to the point where we were able to give Gary and David a guaranteed maximum price for the project before plans were even finished. Right. So, and then that's what does allow us to move rapidly. We break off the building into how it's built. And, we make sure that we understand the pricing. We consult with all the people around, and we actually can guarantee a price really early. And on this project, we actually came in below budget with
Okay.
savings back to the client.
So you mentioned the collaborative process, with your various teams and so forth. And then earlier you also mentioned how great the client was to work with. I guess talk a little bit about, the collaborative process with the client themselves. I mean, what did that process look like, and how did you work with them to ensure, like you said, that the
Yeah.
project's need were met and you came in below budget and you had that guaranteed maximum price and so forth?
Yeah, Gary and David were nearby in Natick, so it was really nice. They probably came in our office 2 times a week, if not more. And what it is what they would do is we would bring the individual partners in for mechanical, electrical, and we would actually sit down with them and the mechanical guys would explain, they would listen too. They would listen to Gary and David about what their wants and needs were. And then we would have healthy conversations about how we could achieve those things, but this cost this cost that. It was a lot of, not even having plans and talking about layout. It was talking together about expectations and goals. And when you do that with all of your different core subs, it really kind of helps everybody kind of gear the project towards where you're headed. They were very, good about sharing what their budget expectations are, so we could work around that. I do know that not everybody likes to do that because they're looking to kind of get the most competitive price they can. But the quicker to market, there's savings there. Sometimes I'm not sure that trying to be so competitive could also has a benefit as much as kind of having these open relationships and partnerships. Because with design build, we're performance based, right? So we don't own what's on a set of plans. We own a performance that we promise. So with Gary and David say to the HVAC guys, I want that room to be 67 degrees at 55 relative humidity. That's what we own. It doesn't matter whether we put a carrier or a train system it is. The mechanical guy owns that operating that way and fixes it until it works. Right. So it enabled Gary and David to feel very secure about moving forward with these people because the risk was kind of transferred to us. Rather than getting a set of plans, the contractor building what's on the plans, but then it actually not working to the hope of the performance.
Okay, great. So the project is complete now, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess talk about the finished project in terms of how it's been able to reflect that initial vision.
I think the project been able to reflect the initial vision because I think that, well, first off, how successful it's going right now. They're almost, I think, 75% booked in the labs that they have, as well. They've already come back to us to start expanding on the other floors. Gary and David have been able to kind of market this building like on none other in the kind of industry, and I think that they've expressed to us how happy they are about where it ended up being and how it ended up finishing up. I think moving this fast and having a space that is kind of unknown. There probably were a few things that if we did it again, we could do a couple of things better, and Gary has said that, but he said ultimately the building is functioning well beyond what he thought it would. And the interest is huge. So I think that the vision of getting people out to the Metro West area, right outside of Boston, rather than inside Boston and Cambridge, and kind of selling this complete, package for startups is really kind of successful.
I want to continue on that in a minute, but wanted to ask you quickly about what was because you mentioned the speed at which it all kind of came together. What was the beginning to end time frame?
I think we gave them a GMP of August of 2018, a guaranteed maximum price, and we were done in, I think it was about 18 months later.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yep. So the building construction was about 13 months.
Okay.
It was we had a lot of ledge. We had to drill for a long time for ledge on the site, but other than that, and but the plans came together fairly fast.
Okay. So, I mean, so you talked about kind of this space kind of standing apart from other, I guess, bio-incubators that might be in Boston and Cambridge and so forth. I guess talk a little bit about that in terms of how this facility is different.
I think the facility is different because of the common labs and the shared space amenities that they offer as part of the package. I think that some of these incubator labs kind of have their their lab, and you go in, and then in the building amenity areas there's a toilet core, and maybe a little tiny break area. But really, what they've done here is they're really fostering collaboration, and they're fostering maybe the transfer of innovation and technology between the groups, as they have a lot of shared conference areas, kind of meeting areas, break areas on every floor, as well as these common labs that have the autoclaves in it that people can use. And they have to kind of come out of their lab and work with each other, as well as they have, my understanding is Gary has a mentorship program that he has there, and as well as I think they do offer financing for people that need it as well. And I think being a privately run lab, they also are not limited to leasing timeframes as from a state funded lab. So
Okay.
it allows people to kind of like get their feet in and be there for a while if they need to. And because I think sometimes medical trials and all that could take 8 to 10 years, to really kind of get off the ground. But I think the hope is that maybe coming together in this space and having the ability to talk with people and collaborate, you can kind of really excel some of these timelines. And I think that's really what is setting them apart, as well as the labs being pre-prepped with freezers, refrigerators, the islands, the backup power, the LN2, the CO2, all of the kind of things that they would need, as well as having access to autoclaves, a lot of equipment that most startups can't afford. So I think that they've kind of gone above and beyond what an incubator provides in this situation.
Okay. And basically, so that kind of boils down to the whole mission of enabling some of these companies to kind of get their innovations to market faster and, have a greater impact on, the healthcare and the world in general, right?
Absolutely. I think that the two of the first people that signed on, Shepherd, and I forget the other one's name, they're already ahead of schedule by multiple years to
Wow.
go trial. Yeah, and one is for cancer treatment, and the other one is for blood loss for people in combat.
Oh,
Just
okay.
be able to, when there's a over amount of blood loss, to be able to replenish the blood so people don't die of that. It's
Great.
pretty,
So
yeah.
so this building, I mean, serves a pretty amazing mission in terms of helping some of these companies and these innovations kind of find their way to the rest of us faster.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we know in our own, design build method, partnerships is everything. Collaboration is everything. I mean, one person just doesn't know everything, right?
Right.
An architect just doesn't know everything, right? They need the structural guy, they need the MEP guy, they need the guys that build it to really explain how things go together. And I don't find that much different in any, profession out there. When it comes to innovation, I think you could worry about not sharing things, but I think also having collaboration could excel what people understand and how fast we can have cures for cancer and other things.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it.